Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into it, tackling the story of a group that just completely defied categorization, the Beastie Boys. We're looking at Adam Horovitz, Adam Yauch, and Michael Diamond Adrock, MCA, and Mike D.
Yeah, it's a huge story. We're going deep into their lives, their careers, both together and apart, and just how much they ended up influencing, well, everything.
Right, because it's easy to just think, biggest selling rap group since '91, which, okay, they are according to Billboard.
But that's almost missing the point, isn't it? Their story is really about constant change, like radical evolution. We've pulled together a ton of biographical info, interviews, history.
To really show how these three guys from New York City went from this pretty aggressive hardcore band
Yeah, hardcore punk.
to pioneers across multiple genres, activists, filmmakers. I mean, the list goes on.
It really does. We're not just hitting the album highlights. We want to unpack how these three very different creative minds work together, how they pushed each other, and how they used their platform.
Exactly. It's about the synergy, the individual paths, the whole picture. So let's start right at the beginning. Back in the New York punk scene, late 70s, early 80s.
Okay, so to really get the Beastie Boys, you got to understand where they came from. And it wasn't hip-hop. It started in 1979 with a band called the Young Aborigines.
Founded by Michael Diamond, Mike D, right? He was on drums.
Yep, Mike D on drums. And the early lineup, it also had John Barry on guitar, Kate Schellenbach on percussion. This was pure New York hardcore punk. Think fast, loud, aggressive.
And Adam Yauch, MCA, he joined a bit later.
In 81, yeah. He came in on bass, replacing someone else. Yauch was already, part of that scene, a friend of the band. And apparently it was John Barry who actually suggested the name Beastie Boys.
And that acronym, Boys Entering Anarchistic States Towards Inner Excellence, that came later.
Oh, yeah, much later. They pretty much admitted it was an afterthought. Like, they needed something to fit the letters after the name was already chosen. It sounds cool, but initially it was just a name. They were punk kids first.
Pure punk, you said. What did that sound like? Who are they playing with?
Well, think bands like Reagan Youth. That kind of energy. Their first actual gig was on Yauch's 17th birthday. And they got slots opening for some really big names in that world, like Bad Brains, the Dead Kennedys.
Wow, so legitimate punk credentials.
Absolutely. And you can hear it on their first official release, the Pollywogs Do EP from 1982. It's a classic piece of New York hardcore. Very raw, very fast.
But things started to shift. John Barry left in '82.
Right, and that's when the final piece of the classic trio falls into place. Adam Horovitz, Adrock. He was super young, only 16. He'd been singing for a band called the Young and the Useless, who often opened for the Beasties.
And his arrival seems to be the real catalyst for change, yeah, moving away from pure hardcore.
It definitely coincides with it. The energy was shifting anyway, Hardcore was intense, but maybe limiting. And they started getting really interested in what was happening with hip-hop, with DJs, sampling.
Which brings us to Cookie Puss.
Exactly. 1983. It's basically a prank phone call they made to Carvel Ice Cream.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. They took the recording, put some rudimentary beats and early sampling behind it, rapped over it kind of jokingly, and somehow this weird little comedy track becomes an underground hit in New York clubs.
That's wild. So that joke track actually opened the door.
Totally. It showed them and others that they could blend that punk attitude with these new hip-hop sounds. And crucially, it caught the ear of a certain NYU student named Rick Rubin.
Ah, Rick Rubin, Def Jam co-founder.
Before Def Jam was even really a thing, yeah. He started DJing for them live, and then, of course, became their producer. He was instrumental in pushing them fully into the hip-hop direction.
But embracing that new direction, that new identity, it had consequences. Kate Schellenbach was fired around '84.
Yeah, that's a tough part of this story. And Adrock himself has expressed regret about it later on.
How did he explain it?
He basically said it was tied up in the image they were consciously building. As they moved towards hip-hop, especially the sort of mainstream kind of macho rap persona of the time,
right,
they adopted this new tough rapper guy identity, as he put it. And in their minds back then, unfortunately, there wasn't room for a female drummer in that specific image. It was regrettable and tied to the posturing of that era.
Yeah. It really highlights that the shift wasn't just sonic. It was about crafting a whole new persona, maybe shedding some of their punk ideals in the process.
I think that's fair to say. So Schellenbach is out. Mike D moves from drums to primarily being an MC, and you have the trio. Mike D, MCA, Adrock.
Yeah.
Solidified. And ready for Def Jam and, well, everything that came next. Hashtag Tag 2, commercial heights and creative independence.
Which was Licensed to Ill. I mean, 1986, that album wasn't just big, it felt like it changed everything.
It was a monster. Produced by Rubin on Def Jam.
Yeah.
It took that rock energy, those big guitar riffs, and smashed them together with rap in a way that just exploded into the mainstream. No one had really packaged it like that before.
And the charts showed it. First rap album ever to hit #1 on the Billboard 200.
And it stayed there for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. That was astronomical. It proved hip-hop wasn't niche. It was a massive commercial force. Sold, what, 9 million copies eventually? Diamond status.
Crazy numbers. But the tour was something else. Not exactly smooth sailing.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
The License to Ill tour was pure chaos, lawsuits, arrests. They were leaning hard into that bratty, party animal, anarchist image. Maybe a little too hard.
Like Ad Rock getting arrested in Liverpool.
Exactly. 1987, Merseyside police arrested him because a riot literally broke out like 10 minutes after they started playing. They were pushing buttons, and sometimes the buttons pushed back.
And then there's the whole Volkswagen emblem thing. That's just iconic Beastie Boys lore.
Isn't it? Mike D starts wearing this huge VW emblem stolen off a car on a big chain. Just this random kind of dumb, defiant fashion statement. And then suddenly, there's this massive spike in VW emblems being stolen off cars everywhere. Fans were desperate to copy the look. It shows the kind of immediate, slightly absurd cultural impact they had.
But after that massive success, things got complicated, right? With Def Jam.
Yeah, the relationship soured. Reports were they weren't getting paid properly. Royalties were missing. Classic music industry story, unfortunately. So they made a huge decision. They walked away from Def Jam.
Which must have been terrifying after having the biggest album in the country.
Absolutely. But it showed their commitment to independence, even early on. They signed with Capitol Records and needed a completely fresh start creatively.
Enter the Dust Brothers.
Enter the Dust Brothers.
Yeah.
And enter Paul's Boutique, 1989. If License to Ill was a rock-rap sledgehammer, Paul's Boutique was like a psychedelic, multi-layered collage.
It sounds nothing like the first album.
Not even close. License to Ill had those big, obvious rock samples. Paul's Boutique was built on hundreds, literally hundreds, of tiny, obscure samples woven together. Funk, soul, jazz, rock, movie dialogue. It was incredibly dense and complex. The Dust Brothers were doing something revolutionary with sampling technology.
More experimental hip-hop, really.
Totally. But here's the twist. Commercially, it flopped. Hard.
Really? After License to Ill?
Yeah. Compared to 9 million copies, Paul's Boutique sold relatively poorly at first. It was too weird, too intricate for 1989 radio. People didn't know what to make of it. It was seen as this big commercial failure.
But history's been kind to it. Very kind.
Immensely kind. Now it's hailed as a masterpiece. Rolling Stone puts it way up on their greatest albums list. Apple Music has it in their top 50 ever. It's the ultimate example of a grower album. And critically, it gave them massive artistic credibility, even if it didn't sell millions right away. It proved they weren't just a one-trick pony.
And that credibility, that freedom, it led them back to their roots in a way, didn't it? With Check Your Head.
Exactly. 1992. After the insane complexity and probably the looming legal headaches of sampling on Paul's Boutique, they kind of went, you know what? Let's just play our instruments again.
So back to basics.
Sort of. Yauch back on bass, Ad Rock on guitar, Mike D on drums. And crucially, they brought in Money Mark Nishida on keyboards, who became almost like a fourth Beastie.
And the sound. It wasn't punk. It wasn't pure hip-hop.
No, it was this amazing fusion. Funk, jazz, hardcore energy, hip-hop beats, all played live in the studio. It had this loose, kind of jammy feel, but still hit hard. Tracks like Gratitude or So What You Want.
And that sound, that blend, people point to it as being really influential, like a precursor to nu metal.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Funky bass lines, heavy guitars, rapped or shouted vocals, hip-hop rhythms. You can draw a direct line from Check Your Head to bands like Rage Against the Machine, 311, maybe even early Korn or Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
They were blending these sounds before it became a whole subgenre.
So they're setting trends again just by doing their own thing. And this desire for control, it went beyond the music, too. They started their own label.
Brand Royal Records.
Yeah.
They wanted total creative freedom, not just for themselves, but to foster other artists they like. They signed acts like Luscious Jackson, Sean Lennon, a pretty eclectic roster.
And the magazine, Grand Royal Magazine.
Which was brilliant, 1993 to 97.
Yeah.
It perfectly captured their whole vibe, smart, funny, obsessed with weird pop culture, music, style. It was kind of like their blog before blogs existed.
And it actually has a weirdly specific claim to fame in the dictionary.
Does. The Oxford English Dictionary actually credits Grand Royal Magazine with popularizing the term mullet head to describe the haircut.
No.
Way. It just shows their strange knack for influencing culture on all these different levels, from groundbreaking music to, well, hairstyle terminology.
Okay, but speaking of influence and pushing boundaries, we have to talk about the sampling lawsuit. Newton v. Diamond. That was a big deal.
Huge deal. This was over their track, Pass the Mic, from Check Your Head. It involved a sample from a flute composition by a jazz musician named James Newton called Choir.
And the issue was they hadn't cleared it properly.
Well, it's complicated. They had cleared the license for the sound recording the specific performance captured on Newton's record, but they hadn't separately cleared the license for the underlying musical composition, the notes themselves.
The distinction between the recording copyright and the composition copyright.
Exactly. And the sample itself was tiny, just 3 notes, played over 6 seconds, looped in the background. Newton sued, arguing that even that small part was his protected composition.
And how did it turn out?
The courts eventually sided with the Beastie Boys, and the reasoning was crucial for sampling law going forward. The court basically ruled that the 3-note segment, that specific little melodic fragment, lacked the necessary originality to be protected by composition copyright on its own.
So it was considered de minimis, too trivial to count legally.
Pretty much. Even though they'd cleared the recording, the court said the composition snippet itself wasn't distinctive enough to warrant infringement. It was a landmark ruling because it offered some protection for artists using very short, perhaps less musically distinct samples. It showed the Beasties were, again, right at the forefront of these evolving creative and legal landscapes.
So once they'd established this level of artistic freedom and, frankly, influence, the individual members really started branching out more visibly, right? Showing their distinct personalities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe nowhere more so than with Adam Yauch, MCA. He became this real force, not just musically, but as a filmmaker and activist. He seemed to have this bigger vision.
The filmmaking pseudonym, Nathaniel Hernblower.
Yeah. He directed a lot of their music videos under that name, often the weirder, more conceptual ones,
Yeah.
like Intergalactic or Sabotage, with Spike Jonze co-directing. And then he directed the full concert film. Awesome. I fucking shot that in 2006.
That was the one filmed by the audience.
Exactly. Gave out like 50 cameras to fans in the crowd and edited their footage together. Super innovative, very DIY spirit, even on that scale.
But he didn't just make films, he started a whole company.
Right. Oscilloscope Laboratories. Founded in 2002. It wasn't just a production company, it became a really respected independent film distributor based in Manhattan.
Distributing some pretty serious films, too.
Oh, yeah. Films like We Need to Talk About Kevin, Wendy, and Lucy. It showed he was serious about film as an art form and wanted to support challenging independent voices. It felt like a natural extension of his worldview.
And that worldview was increasingly shaped by his activism and spirituality.
Definitely. Yauch became a practicing Buddhist, and that deeply informed his public life. He became one of those prominent Western advocates for Tibetan independence.
Co-founding the Milarepa Fund.
Yep, and organizing the Tibetan Freedom Concerts, starting in '96. These were massive events. The first one in San Francisco drew over 100,000 people. It was arguably the biggest benefit concert series since Live Aid. He really put his money and his platform where his mouth was.
And he wasn't afraid to speak out directly either, even on big stages.
Not at all. Remember the 1998 MTV Video Music Awards? They won the Vanguard Award, and Yauch used his acceptance speech time
Instead of thanking people.
to explicitly condemn the prejudice and stereotyping facing Muslim people in the wake of the U.S. Embassy bombings that year. On live TV, on MTV. That took serious guts and conviction. He saw the platform as a responsibility.
Okay, let's shift to ad rock. Adam Horovitz. His path seems different, maybe more focused on music itself and performance.
Yeah, I think so. While Yauch was building institutions, ad rock seemed more focused on like side projects and acting, staying connected to that sort of indie or underground scene.
He had a decent acting career going for a while.
He did. Popped up in films like Lost Angels back in '89, Roadside Prophets in '92. More recently, he was in Golden Exits in 2017. Got good reviews for that. And documentaries, too, like Have a Good Trip.
And musically, he kept doing other things besides the Beasties.
Oh, yeah. He had that side project BS 2000, released an album called Simply Mortified in 2000, did remixes as 41 Small Stars, plays bass in a band called The Tender Moments. It seems like he always needed these other outlets for different kinds of musical ideas, often noisier or more punk-influenced stuff.
And his personal life also reflects that connection to the sort of punk and indie world.
Absolutely. He was married to Ione Skye for a while, but since 2006, he's been married to Kathleen Hanna.
The absolute legend from Bikini Kill and Le Tigre, pioneer of Riot Girl.
Exactly. And he was very supportive, appearing in The Punk Singer, that great documentary about her. It feels like a very genuine connection to that whole independent countercultural ethos.
Yeah.
There's also a personal detail. He started wearing a medical alert bracelet after having a seizure in 2003.
Right. Okay, so then there's Michael Diamond, producer, designer. Maybe the most unexpected path.
Maybe. I mean, he definitely kept his hand in music production. He produced albums for Portugal, The Man, and more recently for the English punk duo Soft Play, that used to be called Slaves.
So applying that Beastie Boys ear to other artists.
Yeah, but he also had this really quirky side project. He recorded this completely bizarre country music album called Country Mike's Greatest Hits back in 2000, just as a joke for friends and family.
Country Mike, I remember hearing about that.
It's legendary in its obscurity. But the really surprising turn was his move into design. Actual interior design.
Wallpaper, right.
The Brooklyn-themed toy wallpaper. He designed it himself. And it wasn't just a little hobby. It was used in the big renovation of the Marquee nightclub in New York back in 2013.
That's amazing. From hip-hop icon to luxury wallpaper designer.
It perfectly encapsulates the refusal to be boxed in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just pursuing whatever interested them, regardless of expectations.
And he's still curating taste now with his podcast.
Yeah, The Echo Chamber on Apple Music. It feels like a continuation of that grand royal spirit, exploring music, culture, ideas. So you see these three distinct threads. Yauch, the visionary activist and filmmaker, Ad Rock, the musician and performer rooted in indie culture, and Mike D, the producer, curator, and designer. The band held them together, but their individual interests were incredibly diverse. #MyV. The final album's an enduring legacy.
So as they moved into the late 90s and 2000s, they were still evolving, still putting out major work. Hello Nasty in 98 was huge.
Massive. That's the one where Mixmaster Mike officially joined on the turntables, adding this whole other layer of sonic wizardry. It went to #1 pretty much everywhere.
And it led to that incredible Grammy night in 99.
Yeah, that was historic. They won Best Rap Performance for Intergalactic, which, okay, makes sense. But they also won Best Alternative Music Album for the entire Hello Nasty record.
Winning in both rap and alternative categories. Had that ever happened before?
Not like that. It was the industry basically throwing up its hands and admitting, okay, we don't know what genre you are anymore, but you're masters of it. It cemented their status as completely unique, genre-destroying artists.
And they didn't shy away from politics either. To the Five Boroughs in 2004 felt very much like a response to the post-9/11 atmosphere in New York.
Absolutely. They self-produced that one, and it had this heavier, more somber feel at times. And they directly addressed the political climate with the track In a World Gone Mad.
Which they released for free.
Yeah, as a free download, specifically to protest the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Again, using their music and their platform very deliberately to make a statement.
Then came another curveball, the Mix-Up in 2007.
Total curveball. An all-instrumental album. Just grooves, textures, leaning heavily into their funk and jazz influences. No rapping at all.
Which must have surprised some fans.
Probably. But it showed they were still restless, still exploring. And it wasn't just a vanity project. It won the Grammy for Best Pop Instrumental Album. They could succeed even without their signature vocals.
But sadly, that period of creative exploration was coming to an end.
Yeah. In July 2009, the news broke. Adam Yauch announced he'd been diagnosed with cancer, a cancerous parotid gland and lymph node.
He sounded optimistic initially, didn't he, calling it very treatable?
He did. But it immediately put everything on hold. Their next album release was delayed, tours were canceled. It cast this shadow over everything.
And that next album, Hot Sauce Committee, that whole release got really confusing.
Oh, completely. There was supposed to be a part 1, then it got delayed indefinitely because of Yauch's health.
So what eventually came out?
They ended up releasing Hot Sauce Committee Part 2 in 2011. But the joke was it contained all the tracks that were supposed to be on Part 1. They just skipped Part 1 entirely.
Which feels like a very Beastie Boys thing to do, even under difficult circumstances.
Totally. One last bit of playful absurdity in the face of everything.
Just before things took a turn, they received that huge honor induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2012.
A massive recognition of their entire career. But it was bittersweet. Yauch was too sick to attend the ceremony. Ad Rock and Mike D went, and they read this incredibly moving letter that Yauch had written.
And then, not long after?
Yeah. Adam N.C.A. Yauch passed away on May 4th, 2012. He was only 47. Just devastating.
And that was effectively the end of the Beastie Boys as a band.
It had to be. Mike D confirmed it later, I think in 2014. He said they just couldn't continue making music under that name without Yauch. It wouldn't be right. Their bond as a trio was too essential.
But the legacy obviously is enormous. The tributes started pouring in.
Yeah, tangible things like renaming a playground in Brooklyn Heights Adam Yauch Park in 2013, acknowledging his connection to the community.
And connecting back to Paul's Boutique, that street corner.
Ludlow and Rivington. That's spot on the album cover. In 2023, it was officially co-named Beastie Boys Square. It brings that iconic image right into the physical landscape of New York.
Their influence is just undeniable. You hear it cited by artists across completely different genres.
Eminem, Rage Against the Machine, Blur. The list is endless. They break down so many walls. They sold 20 million records in the U.S. alone, but their impact goes way beyond sales figures.
And the surviving members have done a great job curating that legacy, too, with the book and the documentary.
The Beastie Boys book from 2018 is incredible, this huge scrapbook-style memoir. And the Beastie Boys story documentary from 2020, directed by Spike Jonze, which was based on their live stage shows. They've ensured the story is told in their own unique way.
Looking back at this whole journey we've discussed, from punk kids to global superstars, filmmakers, activists, it really is about that constant evolution, isn't it? And that fierce independence.
Absolutely. That thread of self-determination runs through everything, leaving Def Jam, starting Grand Royal, Yauch building Oscilloscope, Ad Rock sticking to his indie roots, Mike D designing wallpaper. It was always about controlling their own creative destiny.
And that commitment to control, to their artistic integrity, it extended right to the very end, didn't it? In a really powerful way.
It did, and it brings us to maybe the most thought-provoking aspect of their legacy, stemming from Adam Yauch's final wishes.
Which raises a fascinating question for you, the listener, to think about.
Right, because Adam Yauch's will included a very specific clause. It explicitly stated that Beastie Boys music should never be used in commercial advertisements. Ever.
And they fought to uphold that. The lawsuit against Monster Energy Drink in 2014.
They won $1.7 million. Because Monster used their music in a promo without permission after Yauch had passed. It wasn't just about the money. It was about honoring Yauch's very clear intention to keep their art separate from corporate advertising.
So here's the final thought for you. Considering this group started with such a brash, almost commercial parody image with License to Ill and gave us, "You gotta fight for your right to party," an anthem co-opted by countless commercials and frat parties, how significant is this final stand? How much control should an artist or their estate have over the commercial use of their work after they're gone? And how does this deliberate anti-commercial stance, embedded in Yauch's will and defended by his bandmates, reshape the ultimate legacy of the Beastie Boys?
That final act, fighting to protect their work from being used to sell energy drinks. Maybe that was the ultimate expression of boys entering anarchistic states towards inner excellence, something to really chew on.